What up, YouTube? I had a bunch of storms here last night, so recording this mostly because the internet's out and I needed something to do, but also because I'm working on the backlog of league videos. Um, this was a league probably like a week ago, and I just happened to have it sitting around with no voiceover. So I was like, people always like Dimir Shadow gameplay. That's probably what I have the most of right now because it's kind of the shadow archetype that I've had the most consistent results with. Um, so for anybody who is always wondering, I do enjoy playing a lot of different shadow archetypes. You've seen videos on the YouTube channel for everything from Dimir, Rakdos, Grixis, Golgari, Mardu, Sultai, Orzhov, five color, like everything imaginable with shadow. But at the end of the day, the project has to be self-sustaining. I've got to go out there, do well enough in the leagues to continue to play more leagues and to pay for mana traders every month. So usually when I find a build of shadow that's giving me very consistent results, I'm more likely to play that shadow variant more. That's been kind of Dimir at the moment. The win rate, I do have a full spreadsheet. Let me actually pull that up real quick. So in case you're ever wondering how different shadow decks are treating me personally, I do have a full spreadsheet, and Dimir is giving me a really good 74% win percentage right now. So that's been very, very positive. Rakdos has done good in limited sampling. Sultai, I've got to update, but it's okay. Mardu on up there. But Grixis and Jun, Grixis especially has been very, very mid for me. It's still above that 50% mark, but it's not at the kind of levels that I really want. Not that I expect to win some crazy percent of games, but just 60% is enough to technically go infinite on Moto, because that means you're averaging 3-2, which is going positive. You get your play points back and you get one treasure chest. And that's technically going positive. But in terms of actually making progress, it's probably not worth the time investment. But obviously we'll play Grixis variants as they come up. But before I jump into these matches, I am starting up a new project that I thought y'all might get a kick out of or enjoy seeing. So I wanted to do kind of a showcase of the process of building up a Magic Online collection. Since I sold off everything I owned on Magic Online right when MH2 came out, I thought this would be kind of cool because we have people asking hey, I'm thinking about buying into Shadow, but it costs a ton. And that's great. That's really good feedback. So let's showcase the process. Let's do this live on stream on YouTube. Obviously there's going to be leagues off of YouTube, but let's start taping results. So that's what I started doing. I did day one yesterday of this spreadsheet that I'm going to kick off. Very first day started with 200 play points or 195 play points and one tick. So that was my starting baseline. First day, had a 5-0, had a trophy, and then a 3-2. Opened up the first 11 chests just to try to get a bit of play points going. Opened up about 200, I think it's like 210 play points and 15 ticks. Opened up a Karn the Great Creator that was like 14 point something. Sold it off. So I ended up netting for the day 15 ticks, 210 play points, and I still have one chest sitting around. So this is like my day one start, and we're going to keep track of this as we go. So you can see how long it takes to like build a Magic Online deck if you're grinding out leagues. Um, Obviously, we're not going to have perfect results because we're playing Death Shadow instead of like one of the busted decks in the format. But either way, I think it'll be a cool project. So hopefully y'all enjoy that. And I'm probably going to do like a weekly update video that'll just be a quick like 5 to 10 minutes. Hey, this is what we did this week. This is what we netted. This is how we're doing towards hitting that goal. Um, so yeah, keep track of that. So this is the Dimir League list. Like when I say I'm probably hard set on 71 of my 75, like that's pretty on point. So the 4 Consider, 3 Stub, 4 Shadow, 4 Thoughtseize, 3 Push, 4 Drown, 4 Counterspell, 1 Dress Down, at least 1 Archmage's Charm, 2 Dismember, 4 Wraith, 3 or 4 mURktide. I'm set on. The sideboard I've been loving. I felt like I've had game in just about every matchup post board. But we'll just see if we get to showcase that a little bit. Ultimately, I think that testing cards is great, but at the same time, I don't want to go out and mess with too many different things at once. So if I have like a sideboard that I'm pretty happy with, I'm more likely to mess around with a few slots in the main, keep the sideboard, and then kind of shuffle around as we go. So this is round 1. Our opponent reveals Umori the Collector. If you haven't seen this companion, it's 2 and 2 black-green hybrid. It's a 4/3, and it's got this line of text that all of your spells in your deck have to share a type. So they have to either like all be sorceries, all be enchantments, all be instants, creatures, whatever the case may be. And in return, Umori like makes all the things of a chosen type 1 mana less. So you usually expect Umori in like an all creature deck, something like that. Thoughtseize, really fantastic draw to start off. It's not a creature deck, it is Umori sorceries. So we've got Profane Tutor, Sylvan Scrying, Gaze of Granite, Dark Petition, Bloodchief's Thirst, and Urborg. They do not have any ways currently to really deal with like the mURktide. So I'm hoping that we can take some of these tutor effects. They decide to put a card in our yard. Should I have? I think I should have just played out the mURktide here. So I didn't. I know about Gaze of Granite and Bloodchief's Thirst in their hand. They've got Cabal Coffers, Urborg, but they're not netting any crazy mana right now. So yeah, I definitely think I should have just played out a mURktide. Because even if they took a turn and like Gaze of Granite 1 turn and then kick Bloodchief's Thirst the next, like the fact is they can't do both of them in 1 turn. Here we just play like a small mURktide just to get something on the board. Come back with a bigger mURktide here, grow the first one. So now even if they Bloodchief's Thirst, we do have like a little bit of division of power. But it basically makes it so that the first mURktide we play, we can dodge 1-for-1 removal, like really messing up the second one. Find a Drown in the Lock, pretty decent. Obviously, them having damnation for our mURktides kind of sucks, but it is what it is. So, Wildest Dreams, XX, and a green. Return X target cards from your graveyard to your hand. Exile Wildest Dream. So kind of like a what was that card? Seasons Past. Kind of like a Seasons Past. So we're just gonna counter that. Really hoping we can find one more counter spell here. Stub is really good. Now we can get a mURktide down. Stub a Blood Chief's Thirst. Speak of the Devil. All right, so we've got a 2-turn clock. Dismember doesn't really matter unless they play out Umori. Really hoping they play out Umori. Dark Petition is not Umori, and Vindicate's kind of rough. All right, so they've got a Profane Tutor coming off suspend next turn. And we've got nothing. So, yeah, we'll scoop it to Profane Tutor. They might have like Torment of Hailfire or something for 1,000,000, and that feels awful. So, against this kind of mono black coffers deck, I say mono black. It's basically mono black. Like, I recognize they have green and white, but it's Cabal Coffers and Urborg. Boarding out all the stuff that says kill a dude. None of those spells are going to be good. The Dismember's Fatal Pushes. Board out a mURktide because we saw Blood Chief's Thirst, Vindicate, Damnation. So they have a lot of ways of like actually killing a mURktide. And if they also end up boarding into, say, Relic of Progenitus, then we really don't want to find multiple mURktides. Boarding in Flusterstorms, board in Turoks just to have a couple extra threats in the deck, and board in the 2 Spreading Seas so they can hopefully hit a Cabal Coffers, an Urborg, something like that. Mainly Cabal Coffers, but you know, you take what you can get. So hold up Flusterstorm here in case they go for like a Thoughtseize. Duress I was not expecting, but kind of fine. Inquisition, double Inquisition. At the end of the day, like none of this takes mURktide, so it's not the end of the world. Next turn, I have the ability to get down some sort of a threat. And we're just gonna overload a bit. Opponent can have Damnation in a couple turns, but I kind of have to hope they don't. But then obviously picking up Stubborn Denial is a huge huge boost here. Don't care about Sylvan Scrying because they don't have Urborg and Cabal Coffers. And just like this, if I happen to draw a land, we just end the game. So while I was playing this game, I was with a couple people at the Grimflayer Discord, just kind of hanging out. And we made this joke about, oh, if we see 3 counter spells, we're going to win the game. So game number 1, we saw 2. Game number 2, we saw 3. We saw Flusterstorm, Drown in the Lock, and then that Stubborn Denial at the end. So we wanted to keep that up in game 3 and see if that was actually going to be the case. If we saw 3 counter spells, would we win the game? Okay. So I do have to talk about this keep a little bit. People make jokes all the time about keeping no landers in Shadow. And I do have to specify that a lot of the times, if you see me keep a no lander in the league or on stream, I probably would not keep that no lander if I was playing in an RCQ or a Magic Online challenge or something like that. I do really believe that leagues are kind of your opportunity to test the limits of your deck and see what actually can or can't work. The reason that I kept this no lander is one, I'm on the draw, I'm not on the play, so I get an extra look at that land automatically. I've got multiple copies of Street Wraith. And then if I do get one land, I have a really good ability with this hand to find a second. So I've got 3 looks at the first land, and if I find the first one, every single land in my deck produces blue. So I know I'm going to be able to consider and try to find that second land. And if I find the second land, I'm kind of rolling. Like, I'll have my life total down lower to get Shadow online. I've got Stubborn Denial. I'm already putting like 2, maybe 3 with a fetch land into the yard for mURktide, plus a consider. Like, the hand functions extraordinarily well if I have that one land. If this was double Street Wraith, no considers with Thoughtseize, Counterspell, Drown in the Lock, mURktide, I'm way less likely to keep it because even if I do hit that first land, all I'm doing is Thoughtseize. And then I have to hit the second land or the hand just stops functioning. This, like I said, just gives me that ability to find the second land a lot more consistently. Or we just, top deck the first land and it doesn't matter. So Thoughtseize, we see Dark Petition, Mind Sludge, Wildest Dreams, Cabal Coffers, Plains. I believe Mind Sludge is just like a big, bulky discard spell. Yeah, discard a card for each swamp you control. So good if you got Urborg out. Little awkward with basic planes. They do pick up a second copy of Inquisition, take the shadow there. But like I said, now that we've got considers and ops and stuff, then we can really work to set up our mana. So opponent just adds Umori to their hand. And now we've got mURktide plus Stubborn Denial. So this was kind of the power of that keep, is just being able to get to this point where we can throw down a bunch of spells. I could play out the Thoughtseize mURktide, but I think playing second mURktide, holding Stubborn Denial is significantly better because it just makes this a 2-turn clock. Let me check the math. So if I had not played the mURktide, the second mURktide, this first one would be an 8/8. I would be attacking, putting them down to 10. Thoughtseize. Puts a second spell in the yard. mURktide for 2. So I guess it would have been fine to Thoughtseize, hold up Stub, and then second mURktide next turn, because I would have hit them with an 8/8 mURktide, put them down to 10, Thoughtseize, hold up Stubborn Denial, and then next turn exile 2 spells with the second mURktide, and yeah, and hit for 10, which would have been exactly lethal. So maybe that was actually the safer play. Ultimately, I don't think it matters too much, but I think that would have technically been safer, because I would have had 2 pieces of interaction there instead of just 1. All right, so opponents on Giganta, Sacred Foundry, Ragavan almost assuredly means some sort of like a fair breach deck. Ragavan, typically not a piece in prowess. Kavu, so now it's Zoo. We're certain that our opponent is on Zoo. All right. Second shadow's kind of cool. If they don't have like a lightning bolt or a tribal flames here, we get some interesting block opportunities. So opponent's gonna discard, and we have the option to just like throw in front of the Ragavan and the Wild Nakatl. The Kavu hitting us grows our shadows so they don't die during combat. Opponent plays another Kavu. We are just going to hope they don't have a stubborn denial. Even if they do, we have counterspell and kill them on the crackback. So turn 3 kill with a little bit of help from our opponent, but that's why it's important to know shadow math. If you're not a normal shadow player, and you're watching this video just like for the random kick of it, just know that all damage is done at the same time. So if I've got a 2/2 shadow and you attack me with 2 3/3s, and I block one of the 3/3s, all that damage happens simultaneously. So 3 damage from your second 3/3 hits me. 2 damage from my shadow hits your 3/3. 3 damage from your 3/3 hits my shadow. All the dust settles. Now things check what's dead. Things don't check when damage is dealt. They check after damage is resolved to see what's actually still standing. And so you have a 3/3 that hit me for 3. That's obviously still standing. Nothing dealt damage yet. You've got a 3/3 knight that my 2/2 shadow punched, like little cheeky jab for 2. So it's got 2 damage marked on it, so it's fine. I've got a death shadow that had 3 damage dealt to it. But since things aren't checked when that damage is done, now if the dust settles, it says, okay, well, you did 3 damage to me. How big am I? Well, I was at 11 life before combat damage because I was a 2/2. You just dealt 3 to me. So now I'm at 8 life. Now I'm a 5/5. I've got 3 damage marked on me, but I'm bigger than that. So I'm living. But it happens a lot against decks like Burn with Searing Blaze as well. All right, so opening hand, mulligan decision. I think this is just like, yeah, triple island with Fatal Push, Death Shadow. So I'm not doing anything until turn 3. I need a 4th land to turn on 3 of my spells. Second hand, EE is reasonable for some of their aggressive 2-drops like Kavu, Neshoba Brawler. The counter spell is a bit slow on the draw, but I really don't want to go down to 5. Obviously, them having Ragavan is very unfortunate. I've said it once. I will say it a million times. Ragavan is one of the most problematic cards for this deck to deal with, this Dimir Shadow deck. Like, we don't have that many answers on curve for a Ragavan. And it kind of gets compounded by the fact that our deck is so reactive that we run into the issue of just not having uh, enough ways to deal with something that's on the board, but we have a million ways to deal with stuff on the stack. Guess I should have mentioned sideboarding against Zoo. Since they are like a Bolt Tribal Flames deck, I'm usually boarding out some number of Street Wraiths. Maybe Thoughtseize is kind of treating it a little bit like Burn. Dress Down's coming in because it just straight up kills Kavu, and that's fantastic. You can bring in Flusterstorm, but it's not really high on my priority list. Spreading Seas is good, especially on the play. It's a little bit worse on the draw, but on the play, being able to take out like a Triome or something is very nice. All right, no Ragavan here is pretty sweet. Little opt. Go ahead and keep hitting land drops. So I know people have asked before, But I do think it's very important to mention that this deck is not an aggro deck with counter spells. This is absolutely a control deck with Death Shadow. So be careful when it comes to like making opt and consider decisions and stuff like that, or if you're playing Bauble Street Wraith, making those decisions, because you want to hit land drops. You aggressively want to hit land drops. So don't start thinking like, oh, I'm at 3 lands, I don't want to see any more. Like, I can't deal with more lands. Like, no, you want more lands. Trying to stay above 5 life so I don't get tribal flames here. They don't have black mana currently, but obviously them not having the mana at the moment doesn't mean they can't. But we do see our opponents just got Boseiju, Zagoth. Kind of slow. They could Boseiju our Spreading Seas. But figure with Counterspell, we've got a little bit going on. We're just kind of hoping to get some sort of a threat that we can get down. Otawara is all right. We might bounce the Leyline Binding. We also have a pretty funny line of bounce the Spreading Seas, which I think we try to take here. So we could just get like a redraw, but then they Boseiju the Spreading Seas. At the end of the day, that's kind of okay. If I had known we were drawing a Stubborn Denial, like I would have kept around the Leyline Binding, or kept around the Otawara to bounce the Leyline Binding, but didn't know we were drawing into it, so. Alright, some more counter spells are fine. Like counter spells or threats, either one's pretty okay. I also could have dressed down that Ragavan, but I really want to save this dress down to just like snipe a Kavu. Okay. Shadow with the Stubborn Denial. Got the fetch land to make it lethal next turn. Scion resolves. We're going to counter the Leyline Binding, but then they've got Chain to the Rocks as well. So Dismember kills Scion if they don't have Stub. Like a super stressful match. It's funny because like both of these decks have a lot of the same tools. Just Stubborn Denial, aggressive caustic creatures. Cheap removal. I do think their removal's like a little bit better than ours because Chain to the Rocks, Leyline Binding just offer like 1 mana, exile anything. All right, bottom push, get a Tarn, because again, we're just looking for threats. Dash Ragavan is fine. That is not going to make it across the finish line. This was a punt. So the Veil of Summer is supposed to resolve first, and then you dress down while the Fatal Push is still on the stack, and the Ragavan gains the protection from, or the hexproof from black or blue, and then loses it after the dress down resolves. For whatever reason, I was thinking if I dress down first, it won't gain the protection, but because it's not a static ability printed on the card, and that ability is given to the Ragavan, then it fizzles. Like the dress down, removing the abilities fizzles. Or it doesn't fizzle, just the Veil of Summer overwrites what the dress down turns Ragavan into. And so we should have like Fatal Pushed on the beginning of combat, let them Veil. They get to draw the card, but then we dress down and remove the Hexproof from the Ragavan. The Fatal Push resolves, and we would have drawn into this shadow. So definitely punt there. I was kind of thinking that dress down works sort of like, what is it, humility, that just says they lose all abilities, or like they have no abilities, something like that, but that's not what it says. All right, expedition map. I could have fetch shock, cycle wraith, look for a stubborn denial there. Definitely would have been a little bit better. But opponent playing second land that is not a Tron land in passing is very, very nice for us. So we get down to threat. Now they've got Tron. So we've got Hope and a Prayer. Just like trying to get some sort of use out of that Drown in the Lock. Also had the option here to Fatal Push my own mURktide in response to the Relic, so that if they decided to crack the Relic, then I could go ahead and make the mURktide bigger. And then, yeah, they crack Relic here in response to the Fatal Push, so smart move by them. That being said, we do have a mURktide that might go the distance. Never mind. So, in my spreadsheet, I think I put I've got a winning record against Tron, but I think I got like 4 or 5 losses or something. I would bet a large amount of money that all of those losses have come to my opponent having Cityscape Leveler. Like, just having the castable exile effect that doesn't take 10 mana to do is kind of huge. So, if you're playing against Tron a lot, be careful of that card. Not like we really have any ways of playing around it, but yeah. Sideboarding against Tron, boarding out all the removal spells, boarding in like Spreading Seas, Flusterstorm because it hits Ancient Stirrings and Sylvan Scrying, and it's better than Fatal Push. Take our opportunity to counter whatever we possibly can. I'm really just wanting to get a mURktide down next turn. Consider is free because it does replace itself in the graveyard as far as Delve is concerned. And we always have the chance of seeing a spell on top we don't want, shipping that away, and then carrying on with our day. Warping Whale's fine. Definitely countering a Karn. Spreading Seas is the hot draw. Yeah, I was going to say, I think I Spreading Seas the Forest here because it would stop like Sylvan Scrying and other Ancient Stirrings. Obviously, they top deck another Forest. I want to point out I'm Spreading Seizing the Forest because they're 2 lands away from Tron. So I'm okay if they like top deck a Tron land, but Spreading Seizing the Forest cuts off Sylvan Scrying, Ancient Stirrings, Hardcast Giganta without having like a Star Sphere or something like that. they're running run afoul. It stops that. Game 3, like, you got to keep your Wraith, Thoughtseize, Shadow hands, because at the end of the day, if you're going to beat Tron, it's going to be because you out unfaired them. Warping Whale, Shadow. Annoying, but we'll take it. Like, at the end of the day, we just want to have stuff on board. Get a clock going. Opponent's got an O-Stone, but they do not have a 4th land. So that's really, really big for us. Oh, hit the 4th land. So the question is, are they going to find the 5th land for O-Stone? They do. Backup Shadow is huge here, because now we get Shadow hold up counterspell. Or no, we go for the mURktide to dodge the Blast Zone. We only do this because we drew the Stubborn Denial. If we didn't draw the stub, it would be Shadow, hold up counterspell, even though they have Blast Zone. But because we drew the Stubborn Denial, we get to mURktide, hold up stub, and this beats Wormcoil Engine, Blast Zone, 3rd Tron land with a non-creature spell, Karn the Great Creator. The only thing it loses to is 3rd Tron land Ulamog or 3rd Tron land Cityscape Leveler. But thankfully we dodged both of those. So on to the next one. On the play, okay opening hand. Like, we've got a threat, we've got Consider, Dress Down. Opponent plays like a Ragavan on 1. That's a little unfortunate. So Shock in Blood Crypt. Immediate thought is it could be another Shadow deck. It could be like Scam. So picking up a couple of copies of Thoughtseize is very nice. Definitely Scam. Don't really want to throw out this Shadow into what's likely a Lightning Bolt. Will absolutely dress down Counterspell Spyro. Wonder if I was supposed to dress down that. I feel like I probably should have. But you get to dress down a Turok. That's pretty nice. Turok lands. We can opt or fatal push. Yeah, I kind of like the fatal or the opt decision here, just to try to improve on this Shadow. Now we've got a Shadow that dodges Fury, a Drown in the Lock that counters everything that's not Fury, a Kroxa to ditch a Fiery Islet that gives us a lethal Shadow, and an attempted double bolting that ends in opponent's dismay. So pretty sweet, sweet game there. Sideboarding against Scam. Street Wraiths are pretty bad. Thoughtseize is kind of mid. I like to board out a Stubborn Denial in some of these fair matchups, because Stubborn Denial is only good if you've got a threat out, but your opponent's doing everything in their realm of possibility to keep you from having a threat out. Bringing in Spreading Seas. No, not bringing in Spreading Seas. Bringing in Fatal Push, Shieldred's Edict, the Unlicensed Hearse, the extra Dress Downs. I think that's it. It's got to be weary of like Blood Moon. All right, good hand because it has an answer to Ragavan. It's got counter magic, card advantage spells. Now we've got a Turok. What I do not want to see there is a Kroxa. Kroxa is also a card that this deck has a nightmare time dealing with. So I wanted the island to make sure I hit land drops for Turok. I did not want the second island because I do need the triple black. The opponent plays an EE out. So they do know about the Archmage's Charms. They do not know about the Turok. Just ditch Dismember because it doesn't kill Kroxa anyway. And if I kick Turok on my turn, then I don't really care about like a dashed Ragavan or something. Okay. And this, not this turn particularly, but next turn, I always stress how much I do not like basic swamp in these lists. And this is why. Like, having mURktide plus Archmage's Charm up when you could have had a basic swamp is huge. Like, being able to double spell with our heavy blue pips is so incredibly important. Spyro is absolutely eating a counter of some sort. And now we just need to race whatever they've got off the top. We've got double counters up. Blood Moon, Path of Peril. We don't care about Path of Peril with mURktide out. And all we got to do is be able to counterspell Kroxa like 2 turns in a row if they hit the lands. If they don't hit the lands, there's not really a lot they can hit that we care about. So it is what it is. I think this is match number 5. Pretty reasonable opening hand against blue-red mURktide. I wish I'd had a fatal push so I could fight over that Ragavan, but sometimes it is not meant to be. I also think I was supposed to Thoughtseize there. I was like a little concerned for counterspell, and I figured I had the dress down, but kind of running into this issue where I know they just have Otawara, so. I know they've got Lightning Bolt too. We're just gonna yoink a Channeler. Opponent's got the counter spell. Double counter spell is absolutely brutal. Like, was not on my realm of expectations there. I should just kill this Spyro on my turn there. Did the bolt. Third bolt. So I could have saved a little bit of damage by just like going ahead and killing that Spyro. Would have saved 2 life, put me not dead to a lightning bolt. But I really didn't want to play around third bolt anyway. All right, 6 with a couple considers. We find our black source, so we are going to get to fatal push this Ragavan pretty quickly. I know some people have been really high on wanting to try Spell Snare. This is like one of the matchups that apparently Spell Snare shines in. Opponent fetching will take the opportunity to respond with our Fatal Push so that they don't get a chance to get a Channeler trigger. mURktide right into the counterspell feels great. But at the end of the day, we do have these shadows, and our life total is not cooperating very well. So okay, fetch land lets us get down shadows. EE on 1 sucks. Like turning on Delirium, triggering Shredder, kind of neutering our shadows here. Basically everything we did not want to see out of a card right there. Now we do have lethal on the crackback if they just like don't pop EE, but see if we can make them tap out for Flusterstorm, because if they tap down, maybe they can't EE. Yeah. Like we had to dodge a lot there. We had to dodge them not finding a spell to trigger the Ledger Shredder, not finding a land to be able to EE, which they probably just had the land in hand if they decided to pay for the Flusterstorm. But we kind of had to make something happen there. It just didn't work out. So I think that league was a 3-2, but we got to beat Tron, so that's like the Shadow 5-0 as far as I'm concerned. The only changes that I'm really wanting to test out, and spoiler alert, there is a league coming out with some of these said changes. I want to try out Shadow of Mortality again. I tried it out in a league a while back, but I just want like another good threat. We've tried Brineborn Cutthroat, which I did really like. It works really well with this counterspell heavy game plan. The problem is I've been seeing a rise in bolt decks again, and that makes Brineborn Cutthroat really, really awkward. Like, I want to make sure I point out Brineborn Cutthroat was really, really good when the meta was heavy with things like Living End, and you wanted to have like that flash threat ability, Cascade, the Rhinos decks, uh, reasonable against like the Omnath piles. But if your opponents are playing just like a bunch of fair bolt decks, then it gets significantly worse. And I know that argument of, hey, it might die to bolt, but it takes a bolt away from a shadow or a mURktide. But like bolt or shadow and mURktide don't care about bolt. So it's not that you're acting as a lightning rod in those decks. It's that your opponent is using some amount of cards that would have just been completely dead. But you gave value to them with your Cutthroat. So be careful of that when you're like evaluating Cutthroat as a threat. But otherwise, hope y'all enjoyed the league. Would love to hear some feedback on whether or not you think this idea of like going infinite and showcasing the process is worth it. And as always, if you're enjoying the videos, enjoying the content, feel free to drop a subscribe on the YouTube channel. Doesn't cost you anything. Just lets you know whenever new videos get posted. Have a link to the Twitch channel down below, the deck list. And yeah, hope you all have an awesome rest of your day. Stay safe. Enjoy some good food and company. Catch you back live later. Adios for now.